Okay, what you see here in front of you are my previous phone, the Nexus One, and my new phone, the Motorola ATRIX. And as you can see, one screen is bigger. The Motorola ATRIX has a 4-inch screen, and the Nexus One has a 3.7-inch screen. But the phones are very similar in size. The actual depth of the phone, off of the table here, is almost identical. The Nexus One might be a little bit slimmer, but it's basically the same height up here because of the camera that sticks out on the back here. I just wanted to show you both phones side by side. Now, they're depth-wise, off the table, they're about equal, almost identical, and the same goes for height of the phone. I mean, it's pretty much dead on, equal there. The only difference is the width of the phone. It's slightly wider. The ATRIX is slightly wider than the Nexus One here. Ever so slightly. Alright, just to give you a little quick history lesson here. Of course, the first Android phone was the G1. And that was the top-of-the-line Android phone that you could get because it was the only Android phone that you could get at the time. Then came along, I think it was the MyTouch, the T-Mobile MyTouch that came along, and it was a little bit higher spec than the G1, and it was a little nicer. And that was the top of the line for maybe 4, 5, 6 months. Then the Droid came along, the Motorola Droid came along, and that was top of the line Android for about 2 months. And then a device codenamed the Dragon, because it was the first Snapdragon-based smartphone, came along, and that phone, the Dragon, codenamed the Dragon, came to be known as the Nexus One here. Nexus One was a top-of-the-line phone up until the HTC Evo came out, which is a great phone. But now the top dog is the Motorola ATRIX. It's everything that you could want in a phone. It's a dual-core phone, and its code name was Olympus, as in Mount Olympus, where the Greek gods lived. And I think that's an appropriate name because it is an amazingly fast, capable phone. It's a dual-core phone. It has 16 gigabytes of internal memory. It has 1 gigabyte of RAM. That's the highest amount of RAM in a phone, in any Android phone or any smartphone here in the United States. So it's fast, it's capable, it's a great device. And I'm happy to be moving from the Nexus One, which is still a very capable phone, to this phone, which I can do a whole lot more with. Now, the reason I have both of these set up here, I actually migrated my number here, so now I'm officially with AT&T, so I can't make any phone calls off of the Nexus One anymore. But what I can do is I can give you a little bit of a speed test on both of these phones. Alright, we're going to test out the browsers on these phones. I had to plug in the Nexus One here because it was running low on juice there because I didn't plug it in last night. But now it's plugged in, ready to go, and it's not going to die on me during this process. I'm going to click on both browsers here and see what happens here. Both brought up the browsers like that. Interesting thing to note is that the default browser on the Motorola ATRIX is a Yahoo-powered browser. Of course, you can change that. You can change your home page to anything that you want. And the search you can change to, the search is default Google. You can change it to Yahoo or Bing if you want, whatever you want. We are going to go to a site here. So we're going to type in, let's type in Engadget on both of them. Okay, Engadget, Engadget. I'm going to click on both of them here and see which one brings it up first. Okay, the Motorola ATRIX was a slight bit faster than the Nexus One. Now we're going to click on the Engadget link and see which one brings it up quicker. Pretty much both of them were very fast. Nexus One is a capable phone, but the ATRIX was quicker. And this is the Engadget mobile site. They both scroll really well. And I don't think this is pinch to zoom enabled, but that's okay. Let's go back and let's pull up another site. Let's go to CNET. Now, one thing you'll note is a difference in the keyboards on the two. This is your stock Android keyboard, and this is the swipe keyboard for Moto Blur. I'll show you swipe in another video. It's a very interesting way to text and type. If you're not familiar with it, check out the video that I'm going to make on it. Now, one thing to note is that the Nexus One is running Android 2.2.2. The Motorola ATRIX is running Android 2.2.1. So the ATRIX is a newer phone, but is a slightly older version of Android. I really honestly didn't notice any difference between 2.2.1 and 2.2.2 when the Nexus One upgraded. The Nexus One was supposed to upgrade to 2.3, and I believe the Nexus S is on 2.3.3, but it never came to the Nexus One, so it was supposed to come in December, and it hasn't come yet, so I'm not going to wait around for it. I love the Nexus One. It's been a great phone, and I have no complaints, but the Motorola ATRIX is just such a beast, such a powerful phone that I had to have it. Now, let's go to CNET here. Same thing over here. And we're going to go search. Okay, ATRIX is faster. We are going to go click on the link here and see which one brings it up faster. All right, the mobile site here. They're both the mobile site. And this is probably a flash ad up here, I would imagine, on both of them. So there was a dramatic difference in speed on that. But as you would expect, the ATRIX is a faster phone. It's twice as fast as the Nexus One. I actually do want to do some pinch to zoom on this. I don't think I've actually brought up... Oh, there we go. I brought up a site here that... Okay, there we go. The pinch to zoom. Now, the pinch to zoom on the ATRIX has sort of a bounce to it. Let's see if the same is true. No, the Nexus One is a little more stop and go. ATRIX is a little more fluid on the pinch to zoom, and it's got a bounce to it, which is a little bit of a little more pleasing to the eye. I don't know if that has something to do with Moto Blur, or if it's just because it's a newer, more powerful phone. Like I said, it does have an older version, a slightly older version of Android on it. But yeah, it's very responsive, this pinch to zoom, as you can tell here. Whereas you can actually get ahead of it on the Nexus One a little bit. But like I said, the Nexus One is a very capable phone still. But this is just so responsive. Look at that. I can go fast and it totally responds to me. Okay, so that is a test on the mobile browsers. Let's go back to the home on both of these. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the accelerometer on both phones here. I have them both pulled up to the CNET site, and I'm going to flip them both on the side and see how the accelerometer, how fast it is on both phones. So let's do this. Alright, that was pretty close. I think the Nexus One had the edge on that. And that was identical there. Nexus One. ATRIX. So there's no definitive winner here. The Nexus One is pretty much always quicker when it goes to the landscape mode. When it goes back to portrait, the ATRIX is a little faster there on that one. Alright, I got two Chinese Zodiac going here. Alright, I'm just showing you a couple more differences on the two phones here. I'm going to show you the app drawer. Now I'm going to click on the app drawer on both phones at the same time, and I'll show you what I mean. The app drawer on the new phone, the ATRIX, just kind of appears there. And the one on the Nexus One kind of zooms in and out. I kind of like the Nexus One animation better on that. Now if you notice here, when you move the apps, the ATRIX is just a list of apps. But the Nexus One actually has that little animation where it seems like it's going into the distance back there. So that's cooler on stock Android, but it's not such a big deal. Now let's go back to the home screen here on both phones. Now I'm going to show you how you get to the card view on both phones. Now on the Nexus One, you have these little buttons down here along the navigation down here. There's 2 buttons there and 2 buttons there, and they each represent where you're at on the home screen. So there are 5 home screens on the Nexus One. There's 7 home screens on the ATRIX. So if you want to get into the card mode on the Nexus One, you just hold down these little dots on the side and you see the card view there. If you want to do the same on the ATRIX 4G, you just hit the home button while you're on the main home screen here. Okay? And then you get a card view of all your 7 screens here. Okay? Just a couple little differences between what is basically stock Android and Moto Blur. Now one thing to note, we're just going to contrast these two a little bit. One thing to note on the Nexus One, you have the little trackball here. And I like that because if you were going to highlight text, it's a very easy way to really get in there and highlight the exact letter that you want, because a finger is obviously a big thing, so it's kind of hard to highlight if you're going to edit text or something like that. So I haven't really tried it on the ATRIX yet, though. But also, if you would get a notification, if you would get an email or a Yahoo Mail, this thing would glow purple, this little trackball here. It would also glow green, and it would glow white if you got a text message. So I like that on that. But I'll live without it. Another thing that you'll note here, and another thing that's interesting about a lot of Android phones, are the capacitive buttons down here. Now the search button is in the same spot on both phones. It's on the far right on both phones. But the back button is here on the ATRIX, and the back button is on the far left on the Nexus One. The home button is here on the ATRIX, and it's the second one off of the right on the Nexus One. And then the menu button is over on the far left on the ATRIX, but the menu button is the second one in from the left on the Nexus One, which is not standard. It's not a big deal because it's not like I blindly use those anyway, but it's just an interesting little note. Now, the back of the phones, the camera's offset to the left side of the phone over here, and on the Nexus One, it's in the center. Now, both of these phones have 5-megapixel cameras on the back here, and they both have LED flashes, although I do believe that the ATRIX has a dual LED flash, and the Nexus One only has one. This has the fingerprint scanner, this does not. You got the speaker down here for the ATRIX, and then this slit up here is a speaker for the Nexus One. So they both have the volume rockers, but the volume rocker is on the opposite side. So on this side of the Nexus One you have the volume rocker. And I just got another notification. Another difference between the two phones is that the ATRIX 4G has an HDMI out, which is actually a mini HDMI out here, and so you can plug it into your television or a monitor and play your content out of this phone. It has a mini USB here as well. The Nexus One has a mini USB down here, which I'm actually plugged in right now because I'm charging it up, but it does not have an HDMI out. Also, a thing to note, the ATRIX has a front-facing camera here. The Nexus One does not. So that is to compare and contrast these two phones. You have the old top-of-the-line phone. About a year ago, it was the top-of-the-line phone for about 6 months until the HTC Evo came out. And now you have the current top-of-the-line Android phone, and I would say top-of-the-line cell phone, bar none right now, in the Motorola ATRIX, because just by virtue of specs, there is no phone out right now that has the specs of this phone. Dual-core processor. 1 gigabyte of RAM, desktop quality RAM. You can actually run this as a desktop. You can plug it into a dock. And I didn't buy any of those docks. Check my last video if you want to know why. but I might down the line, sometime down the line. There's a couple differences between the phones. This is stock Android over here on the right, and this is Moto Blur here on the left. I have not customized the ATRIX as of yet, so I will be customizing that at some point in the near future. But I just got it today, and I'm playing around with it. Now I'm going to do a couple other videos on this, and just keep checking back on my channel if you want to check out more videos and more information on the Motorola ATRIX. But that's how the Motorola ATRIX stacks up to the Nexus One, and that pretty much does it for this video. So I will see you next time.